Hello, this is Dave Sugarbaker, and today is the first Sunday of 2026. It's January 4th, 2026, and I have something from the end of the book of Job. That's what I'm going to start with. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up your loins like a man. I will question you, and you shall declare to me. Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me, if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. Or who stretched the line upon it? On what were its bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the heavenly beings shouted for joy? The book of Job is a fable that challenges one of the basic tenets of early Jewish religion. Early Judaism was based on a covenant, on an agreement. And the agreement was that the Israelites agreed to keep God's laws, and in exchange, God agreed to be their God and protector. So God brought the people of Israel out of Egypt. God gave them the promised land. God was their protector in battle against sometimes overwhelming foes. If things were going badly for the Israelites, they would do an inventory to determine if someone was failing to follow God's laws. And if they found the lawbreaker, it would explain why God was not assisting them to victory. When they collectively failed to follow God's laws, things went badly for them. It's how they understood their history. If they took foreign wives, for instance, or if they worshiped other gods, then the enemy invaded their territory, or they were exiled to Babylon, or great famine descended upon the land. On an individual level, the Jews understood that poverty, disease, and even infertility were punishments from God. It wasn't God's fault. God was a just God. But if humans failed to follow God's laws, then calamity was likely to fall on them. If a well-regarded man suddenly became ill or a rich man suddenly lost his wealth, the community would have to reassess. They may have assumed that he was a good person, but obviously there was some secret sin, some broken law causing a problem. If the unfortunate one could root out the sin, then he could be restored to righteousness. There was little room for compassion in this interpretation of how the world worked. If someone was impoverished or riddled with leprosy, best to leave them alone. They were getting the punishment from God that was due to them. They were obviously sinners. By the time of Jesus, this mindset had produced the righteousness game of the Pharisees. The Pharisees ostentatiously followed the many laws of the Torah to demonstrate their righteousness. The more laws that they followed, the more righteous they were, in public perception, that is. A player for Indiana, after the decisive win over Alabama in the Rose Bowl, wanted to give credit to God for handing them the win. Does God intervene in football games to favor the more righteous team? Some modern-day Pharisees would claim exactly that. In fact, there are segments of Christianity that thrive on the same cause and effect religion that the ancient Jews practiced. We human beings like to be in control. We look for certainty in an uncertain world. If we can follow the rules well enough, we would like to think that we would be rewarded with a safe and stable life. We will be in control of our life and our destiny, and maybe God will even let us win the Rose Bowl. So it comes down to this. In the old Jewish righteousness system, follow the rules and get God's blessings, wealth, health, the admiration of your community, or break the rules and calamity will fall on you. The fable of Job argues that bad things sometimes happen to good people. The book of Job would argue that not everything in the world is arranged to protect human life. Earthquakes, tornadoes, Ebola, COVID. So God and Satan, in the beginning of the book of Job, God and Satan meet. And God brags about Job, who is, as God says, a righteous and upright man who loves God and shuns evil. And Satan says, does Job serve God for naught? Satan argues that if Job's wealth and health and family are taken away, Job will curse God and die. God allows Satan to take everything Job has, but not to take Job's life. So Job's possessions and his loved ones are all taken away. He doesn't like it, and he wants a reason why he's made to suffer. He's still caught in the old Jewish system. When he hasn't done anything to deserve it, why have these bad things happened? But he continues to worship God. He says, though he slay me, yet will I worship him. There are three supposed comforters for Job. Each one of them argues that he must have screwed up somehow, and it's the only explanation that Jewish religion has for Job's suffering and loss. Job insists that he hasn't done anything to deserve his tragic losses. In the final chapters of the fable, Job tries to get God to give a reason for all that he's been put through. And God finally responds to Job, but not in the way that Job had expected a response. God says, wait, who do you think you are? Where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who determined its measurements? Surely you know. One of the few places where God speaks and is sarcastic. Who stretched the line upon it? Or what were its bases? What were his bases? On what were his bases sunk? Or who laid its cornerstone when the morning stars sang together and all the heavenly beings shouted for joy? The most righteous human being on earth wanted answers from God. He wanted to know why, and God would not give him the answers. We're not going to be able to obtain certainty. We're not going to be able to read God's mind and come up with the precise behavior that will earn us security in an insecure world. In every one of the world's great religions, a portion of its followers have followed the human temptation to develop a certainty system. They have a formula that supposedly will lead to safety and security in this uncertain world. We human beings want answers that we can rely on. I've often said that answers sell so much better than questions. So in an uncertain world, what can we count on? If we listen to Jesus, there are several things that we can say with certainty. 1, God exists. Secondly, God's overriding characteristic is love, as a parent for the child. Not because the child is perfect, but because the parental love is infused with forgiveness. We're certain that we are to emulate our spiritual parent who loves unconditionally. And we are not going to be able to do that perfectly, but luckily we are forgiven for being less than perfect. A certainty, we are placed in a beautiful world, not a perfect world. Sometimes bad things will happen. Even at the worst, though, we are still surrounded by the love of our spiritual parent. Another certainty, evil exists. It's real, and it's powerful. Jesus says we are to know and understand evil and not participate in it. But the most powerful force in the world is not evil, it's love. None of us gets out of this life without coming to terms with loss. It's a universal human theme. It's a certainty. The only way out of grief is through it. We come to realize that love never ends, but sometimes love is forced to evolve when faced with loss. We need compassion and understanding as we deal with those who grieve. That's another certainty. And finally, real listening is a gift of love, especially when we want to support someone who is struggling with loss. It might be good to spend twice as much time listening as we spend talking. So, we human beings want certainty, but the things that we can be certain about are things like God is love, and that the most powerful thing in the world is love. We can be certain that evil is real, and we are to struggle against it. We can be certain that loss is a byproduct of love. It's part of the human condition, and love is expressed in human interactions by listening. But as good as we can be, God's probably not going to let us win the Rose Bowl. That's just not in the cards. Thank you for listening. God bless you. Hope your New Year's is going to be positive and uplifting for you. And take care. I'll see you soon.